Welcome back to The Explainer. So, right off the bat today, I want you to take a second and really consider the hidden history alive in the very syllables we speak every single day. You know, we usually just think of language as this totally practical tool, right? Just a way to get our point across. But what if the everyday words you're using are actually holding ancient, literal secrets?
I mean, seriously, what does a modern Australian city have in common with a booming thunderstorm and, of all things, ancient tree carvings? Okay, yeah, I know it sounds like the setup to a weird riddle, but unpacking this mystery is actually the perfect way to understand that our modern language is essentially a fossil record. It's a fossil record of ancient magic, of nature worship, and of lost tribes. The casual words we use to describe our world are deeply fundamentally entangled with how our ancient ancestors understood the entire cosmos.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the Pictish Thicket, Unpacking Perth.
The historical journey of this one single word is just staggering. Think about it. If we look back to 1829, the Australian capital city is founded, and it's named Perth by Sir George Murray. And he named it after the city of Perth over in Scotland, which was a huge settlement during the Middle Ages. But if we trace that name back even further, straight through the Middle Ages and way back into antiquity, we find its true root hiding in a completely extinct Celtic language. That language is Pictish. It was spoken by the Picts, who were the ancient inhabitants of central and northern Scotland. And in their language, the word Perth literally just meant wood, copse, or thicket. That's it. It brilliantly shows us how ancient people literally named the places they lived based on a direct, tactile, physical relationship with nature. So when we say Perth today, we are taking a sprawling, high-tech modern metropolis and linking it directly back to a simple, ancient little thicket beside a Scottish river. It's pretty wild.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Thunder God, Sound and Myth.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark, undeniable contrast in how these two everyday weather phenomena were conceptualized by our ancestors. Take lightning. It's a highly practical word. It just evolved as a verbal noun from a root meaning to make bright or illuminate. It's literally just describing an action. Thunder, on the other hand, completely different story. It is a deeply mythological word that is completely inseparable from the ancient gods.
Let's actually trace the timeline of thunder here, because this is fascinating. It begins way back with a prehistoric root meaning to stretch or to resound. Fast forward to antiquity, and this evolved into the Proto-Germanic word thuneros. But here is the absolutely crucial part. That wasn't just a noun, it was the actual name of the thunder god, the deity we all know as Thor. This passed right into Old English as Thunor, which eventually gave us our modern word. So whenever you talk about thunder, you are literally echoing the name of a Germanic thunder god across immense spans of human history.
To truly grasp the weight of this, we have to travel all the way back to Proto-Indo-European, or PIE. For those who don't know, this is the reconstructed ancestral language of the entire Indo-European family. The original PIE root, sten, was an imitative sound, right? It was meant to mimic a loud, booming noise. The very sound of thunder was codified thousands and thousands of years ago by our linguistic ancestors, perfectly capturing the raw, terrifying power of the sky.
Which brings us to Section 3, the origins of runes, written in wood and stone.
There's a really fascinating comparison to be made between the Latin alphabet we use and the ancient Elder Futhark. Notice the shapes. Latin relies really heavily on curved and horizontal lines. But the Elder Futhark, it is intensely angular. It's made almost entirely of straight vertical and diagonal lines. Why? Well, it's all because of the physical constraints of their medium. These ancient Germanic peoples obviously weren't writing with ink on delicate parchment. They were aggressively carving these symbols into hardwood and stone. Think about it. If you carve horizontal lines along the grain of a piece of wood, the wood is going to split. So the script was literally engineered by the natural material it was carved into.
And because of these remarkably distinct angular shapes, not to mention a completely alien alphabetical order, a lot of scholars support the North Italic hypothesis. Basically, this argues that these ancient Germanic symbols were definitely not simply copied from the curved Latin alphabet. Instead, they were likely adapted from angular alpine scripts, like Etruscan. They were specifically engineered from day one for carving.
All right, Section 4, reading the Elder Futhark, Aether and Nature.
So how is this thing actually structured? Well, the Elder Futhark consists of 24 runes in total. But instead of just one long continuous list like we're used to, they are divided perfectly evenly into 3 groups of 8. These groups are called Etir, which translates directly to families or clans. We have phrase et, Hagel's et, and Tier's et. This wasn't random either. This highly unique fixed sequence almost certainly held deep mnemonic or even cosmological significance for the people using it.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is that these symbols weren't just mundane letters used for, basic accounting or spelling. Far from it. They were direct, living reflections of the Germanic worldview, completely intertwined with their pagan, nature-based belief systems. Every single rune had its own name, a phonetic value, and a profoundly rich symbolic meaning.
Let's actually unpack a few specific examples from the Futhark to see exactly how this works in practice. Take the rune Sowilo, which represents the sun. Now, it doesn't just mean a glowing orb in the sky. It fundamentally embodies success, vitality, and illumination. Then we have Tuaz, which is named after the god Tyr. It represents justice, moral authority, and the heavy sacrifice needed for a true victory. And finally, look at Berkana, named for the birch tree. In the natural world, the birch is super interesting because it's often the very first tree to grow back after a devastating forest fire. Therefore, its rune perfectly symbolizes new beginnings, fertility, and profound resilience.
This intense connection to nature is just beautifully captured in the old Anglo-Saxon rune poem. It reads, "The birch lacks fruit, yet it often bears beautiful branches and is blessed with fire." I mean, how incredible is that? It perfectly illustrates how natural, everyday elements represented resilience and rebirth to these ancient tribes. For them, the mundane, physical world and the magical, spiritual world were quite literally one and the same.
And that takes us to our final section, Section 5, Echoes of the Ancients, Everyday Magic.
We have definitely uncovered a remarkable linguistic fossil record today. I mean, we saw how a sprawling modern city like Perth is intimately tied to a lost Pictish word for a literal thicket. We discovered that whenever we casually talk about thunder, we are actually vibrating a Proto-Indo-European root that invoked the god Thor. And we explored how the Elder Futhark runes weren't just an alphabet at all, but fossilized magic, engineered entirely around the physical constraints of wood grain, deeply rooted in nature and myth. The words we speak and the history we uncover are literally living bridges to the beliefs and environments of our ancestors.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. The very next time you hear thunder rumble across the sky, or maybe you visit a town named after some simple natural landmark, ask yourself, what ancient gods and lost tribes are you accidentally invoking? The history of human belief isn't just locked away in some dusty museum, it's right there in your mouth every single day. Keep exploring, keep questioning everything, and I will see you in the next explainer.